So I'll share with you a story that happened to me yesterday. And before we even start, I'll just tell you it's not a dramatic story. It's not an exciting story. It's actually a rather mundane story. But it was meaningful to me. So yesterday, I was giving my Tanya class and my 11 o'clock Monday Tanya class on Central Avenue in Cedarhurst. And if you want to see that class, by the way, it's here on this channel. And my son, Yisrael, called me during class, and I couldn't take the call because I was in class. So after the class, I picked up the phone, and I called him back, and he tells me that he is at the Ohel. He works in Crown Heights in Brooklyn at the Shluchim office, and part of his work for the Shluchim office sometimes causes him to go to the Ohel, so he was there on like a work task. So he said, hey, you want to come by? Because it's, we're 15 minutes from the Ohel. So I said, absolutely. How long are you going to be there? So he told me, he's not going to be there for long because he has to get back to Brooklyn. I said, absolutely. So I get in the car and I start going. And I was conscious of the fact that my gas tank was on empty, and it had actually been on empty for a day already. But I wanted to get to him, and I knew he was in a hurry, so I should have pulled over to get gas, but I didn't. And I made it to the aisle, and I saw my son, and we sat down for a little bit. We learned a little something together. And then I headed back. And as I'm heading back, I knew that I got to get gas now. It's, getting urgent. And then I had that feeling, which I don't know if you've ever run out of gas, but there's a certain feeling where there's just no fuel in the fuel line anymore, and the car starts to sputter and jerk. And I felt that, and I knew I didn't have much more to go before I was just going to completely be stuck. And I actually, put into the Waze closest, the Waze app, GPS app, where's the closest gas station? There was one that was like 0.7 miles, and then I missed the turn for it. And so anyways, if you don't know Five Towns geography, I was going from the Ohel back to our house in the Five Towns, and probably the worst possible place in that entire area to run out of gas would be Brookville Boulevard. You can Google it. Brookville Boulevard is a one-lane road through a swamp. It's literally through a swamp. There's nothing but swamp, undeveloped land on both sides because I guess it's swamp and you can't build on it. And it's one lane and it floods all the time. Whenever there's a rain, it floods. And I made it halfway into it's like a twisty path. It's maybe like a mile long. I made it like halfway into that mile, and it just, boom, just quit. And the check engine light came on, and the power died. The power steering went out, and that was it. I'm just dead in the water. And it's a one-lane road, and traffic is piling up behind me, and everyone's getting very annoyed. And obviously it's very stressful and embarrassing, and I'm feeling bad for everybody who I'm inconveniencing, and cars are having to try to go around me, but there's really no space. And anyways, so I called my wife, but she didn't answer. So I sent her a WhatsApp, and I told her I just ran out of gas. I'm in the middle of Brookville Boulevard. But I knew actually she was on the way to Brooklyn with our girls for part of the Kinnis HaShluchos program. So I knew she wasn't really going to be even able to help me. So then I called my son-in-law, but I guess he was at work. He didn't answer. I called a friend of mine. He didn't answer. So I'm like, what am I going to do here? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Cars are piling up behind me. I got out of the car, and I looked, and I saw right behind me there was a 12-passenger van. And I saw the driver, and I walked over to him, and I said to him, my check engine light came on. My power completely cut out. My car will not move. I think it's just that I ran out of gas. Can you use your van to push me to get out of this little road and onto Rockaway Turnpike and get me to the gas station? So he's like, sure, yeah, go back in your car and I'll push you. Okay, so I was so grateful. And he was pushing me for a while, and then it wasn't like it was like I felt like I was skidding like on a sled, not a car. And then I realized the emergency brake was on. I think it's like a safety measure. I don't know why, but I didn't turn it on, but it was on. So I turned off the emergency brake, and I was in neutral, and he was pushing me. So then he was pushing me a little bit better. It was going very slow. It was creeping, and cars are like honking as they're whizzing around me, and it was just really going slow. And finally, I realized it's not really going to be safe for him to do this, to push me out onto Rockaway Turnpike, which is a very busy road. So I got out and I told him, let's just get me over to the side. See, Brookville Boulevard, because there's swamp on both sides, there's no shoulder. There's nowhere to pull over. There's not even where to like ride a bike. So I said, let's just get to the end where it meets up with Rockaway Turnpike, and it's like an intersection. So there the road's a little bit wider, and I can just at least pull off more to the side so people won't have a hard time getting around me. So that's what we did. And so then we got my car off to the side, and then he says to me, okay, get in the car. I'll take you to the gas station. And as I'm stepping up into his 12-passenger van, for the first time, I saw the sign on the side of his van, and it was a church van. So I said, oh, the church van. I said, thank you so much. I said, I really have to thank you so much. And I took out some money to pay him. He said, no, don't pay me. Don't pay me. We have to help each other. We're just all helping each other. This is what God wants us to do. I said, you're amazing. God bless you. Like I said, the money that I was going to give you, can I give it to charity on your behalf? He said, yes, give it to charity. I said, okay, fine. No problem. Thank you so much. So then he's driving me to the gas station. And then my phone rang. It's my wife. She says, I got your voice note. We went to the gas station. We came back from Brooklyn, or they were halfway to Brooklyn. They came back. We have a canister of gas. Just go back to where you were. Go back to the car. We're coming with the canister of gas. So I tell the guy, oh, I'm so sorry. Don't take me to the gas station. Just take a U-turn. So he takes a U-turn in the middle of Rockaway Turnpike, takes me back to where my car was. And I thank him profusely, and I get out, and my wife pulls up with the kids, with the girls, and she's like, here's the canister. I take the red canister, those red plastic things. I put in the gallon of gas, and it was enough to get me to the gas station. Okay, so I get to the gas station, and like I said, my check engine light had come on when my car ran out of gas. And now I saw not only was the check engine light on, but there was the secondary brake system failure light on. So both those lights are flashing, and there's a message, go to dealership. Like you have to go to your dealership. Required maintenance, something like that. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I ruined my car by running out of gas. So when I got to the gas station, I bought the fancy gas, the premium, the expensive stuff. I thought maybe that'll, help heal it. I don't know. So then I went home and I Googled, can running out of gas actually cause your check engine light to come on for a valid reason? Like, I wanted to know, is it just tripping a code that makes the computer think there's an engine problem and you just need to clear the code, or is it a real engine problem? So I saw different answers, online. Yes, I knew I put check engine light after running out of gas. Reddit. I did the Reddit trick. Yeah, and whatever. There was different opinions on that. So I saw a video of somebody just saying, how to clear the code just by disconnecting the battery. So you need a wrench for that. So I called my son-in-law and I'm like, do you have a wrench? Because actually I bought him a wrench set once. Long story, but we were in Pittsburgh and my driver's license fell behind the dashboard of a rental car, and he removed the entire I'm not going to say which rental car company it was, but he removed the entire dashboard assembly in order to get my driver's license out. At any rate, so I knew he had that ratchet set. So I said, Moishi, do you have the ratchet? He's like, yeah, but I got to go to a wedding right now, and so I can't do it right now. I'm like, okay, no, don't worry about it, Moishi. Okay. So then I decided, I'm not going to mess with trying to disconnect the battery. I'm just going to go get a code reader. There's a thing, costs $20, called a code reader. If you buy the $30 version, not only it'll read the codes, but it'll clear the codes. So I'm going to go to AutoZone. So I drive to AutoZone, and I walk up to the AutoZone, and there's a sign on the door that written in marker on paper that says technical difficulties, be back later. I'm like, what's going on here? And I turn around to like go back to my car, and there's a guy standing there, and he's like, yeah, I've been standing here for an hour and a half. I think, the computers are down. I'm like, really? That's terrible. I said, why don't you go to another auto store? Aren't there other auto stores around? He says, yeah, but I have to go to this one because I have to return a part that I bought from here. I'm like, oh my goodness. And you've been here for an hour and a half? He's like, yeah, I've been here for an hour and a half. I don't know why, but I felt like this guy was knowledgeable. So I said to him, you seem very knowledgeable. Could I ask you a question? He's like, sure. I'm like, I ran out of gas. I said, in the worst place, you know where I ran out of gas? Down there on Brookville Boulevard, and that one-lane road in the middle of the swamp. And I said, and my check engine light came on, and I'm wondering if it's because I ran out of gas, it just tripped a code, and it just needs to be cleared, or if it's a real engine problem. So he gave me this whole long answer. I didn't really follow it, but it was very confident sounding. And basically told me, nah, you just got to clear the code. It's fine. There's no real engine problem. I said, okay, so since you're so knowledgeable, let me tell you another thing. There's another warning light on that says secondary brake system failure. I think it's because I let that van come up and push me, and maybe that's what did it. And he gave a whole long explanation, which I didn't follow, but he also sounded very confident. And he was like, nah, that's just another code. You got to clear that code. And I'm like, okay, third thing is, when he was pushing me for a while, I didn't realize it, but my emergency brake was on. Did I damage my car? And he gave me another long explanation why actually that can't do any damage and it's fine. I don't know if any of this was accurate, but it sounded accurate. Okay. So I'm like, thank you so much. He's like, listen, you don't need a code reader. You don't need to go clear the codes. Don't spend your money here at AutoZone. He said, there's a dollar store right there. Go buy a wrench and just disconnect the battery. I'm like, yeah, that's what I was going to ask my son-in-law to do. He's like, that's what you should do. Just disconnect the battery and then start and stop the car 3 times and it'll clear all your codes. And that's all you need to do. I'm like, I really appreciate it. It's so nice of you. Somebody helped me earlier today, the guy in the 12-passenger van. I said, it was a church van. He's like, well, of course, because God sent him. I'm like, yeah, I know. I felt that, that God sent him. And he says to me, God sends us people all the time. I'm like, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he does. And he says to me, I used to not be a believer. I'm like, oh, really? And he starts talking to me like about his life. And he's like, I work for a Jewish guy. You know Ephraim from the pizza shop? I'm like, I think maybe, I don't know. Yeah, maybe I know Ephraim from the pizza shop. Okay. At any rate, so he's like, but, I used to not be a believer, but now I'm a believer, and I know that God sends us people. I'm like, yeah, that's so true. So then he says to me, my sister was back in El Salvador. This guy was, I guess, originally from El Salvador. So he says, my sister was back in El Salvador. She was on a bus, and she got an idea in her head, get off the bus. You can't be on this bus. Get off the bus. So she dismissed it. She's like, that's crazy. There's no reason to get off the bus. And then it came back to her a second time. Get off the bus. You got to get off the bus. And she dismissed it a second time. And then all of a sudden, a worker came over to her. Sounds like in America, like a train conductor, but I guess it's like a bus conductor. Maybe it was the bus driver. I don't know. He said somebody from the bus company came over to her while the bus was driving and was like, did you pay? You didn't pay. And she did pay. She's like, she knew she paid, but you didn't pay. You got to get off the bus at the next stop. And the very next stop, a minute later, they kicked her off the bus. So he says 5 minutes after they kicked her off the bus, there was a gang that came and shot up the windshield of that bus and injured the driver, and the driver lost control of the bus and the bus flipped over. So he says to me, you see, my sister dismissed it twice, her thoughts about getting off the bus. So then God sent her a person. God sent her this guy to kick her off the bus, even though she really did pay. And God sends us people all the time. I'm like, that's so true. Thank you so much. So I said, I'm going to go in the dollar store and buy that wrench. So I went into the dollar store and, I walked around and I was looking for wrenches. They didn't have any wrenches. So I bought a couple Diet Cokes and some soap that I needed. And I don't know, the whole thing took about 5 minutes, but there were no wrenches. So then I left the dollar store and I was looking for the guy just to say hi or bye or whatever. And he was gone. It looked like in the meantime, the AutoZone had opened and he must have done his thing at the AutoZone and he'd left. And so I go to my car, and I had to hurry also because I had a Zoom class starting, and I had to be back here at the Soul Word Studios. So I get into the car, and I turn on the car, and all the codes are cleared. Check engine light is off. Secondary brake system failures, light is off. Codes are all cleared. It's all done. All better. Just like that. And I went back home to the studio, and I gave my class. And that was it. And like I said, it's not a dramatic story, but I was thinking a lot about this. So many lessons here. And the price for the lesson, sometimes in life we learn lessons and it's a very high price. We learn sometimes very hard lessons that, God forbid, really, really challenge us. But here, the price for this lesson was, moderate level of stress. The worst part of it was running out of gas on Brookville Boulevard. That was the worst part, and as far as lessons go, it's a pretty easily learned lesson, right? So first of all, I was just grateful for how cheap the lesson was, that it wasn't, God forbid, something really, really difficult. It was just minor stress, and it did the trick to teach me a lesson. And what was the lesson? Well, I think the big one was God sends us people. God sends us people. And that's what that guy said in front of the AutoZone. God sends us people. But even within that lesson are multiple lessons. Like sometimes God sends us people who are nice and helpful, like the guy with the 12-passenger van who was pushing my car. That's a nice person. But sometimes, like the story he told me about his sister in El Salvador on the bus, God sends us people who look like they're not nice people. A guy wrongly accused his sister of not paying for the bus and kicked her off the bus. So it looked like he's not a good guy. And yet he was sent by God to do something good for her, right? So God sends us people all the time. Sometimes they're acting like they're helping us. Sometimes they're acting like they're not helping us, but they're all messengers and they're all ultimately part of God's plan, and God is helping us. So all of his messengers are somehow helping us, right? And that's a important lesson to remember. I was also kind of thinking about, the fact that this guy was from El Salvador. The guy driving the 12-passenger van was Haitian. And I was thinking about how, there's so many people, it's a big world, different cultures and nationalities, but we're all united by the fact that we want to live in a better world. And like the guy with the 12-passenger van said, no, we got to just help each other. We got to help each other. That's what he said to me. We got to help each other. And there's just so many different people coming from different backgrounds, but we all agree on just this basic idea of humanity has to help each other. And that was a lesson. And then another lesson, which here's a little bit of philosophy, if you like that kind of thing. But, sometimes you wonder, how much does free choice interfere with God's plan? Because, you think about it like this. This whole story only happened because I made a bonehead move and didn't put gas in my car. So really, it was my poor use of free choice, that made the whole scenario come up in the first place, because I chose not to put gas when I should have, as a responsible adult. I should have put gas in the car. And yet, even though the whole situation came about because of my poor choices, or my poor choice, it still didn't stop God from orchestrating every single detail of it in a loving, caring way that taught me such a powerful lesson and such a powerful reminder that I'm so grateful for. So that was also a lesson. It was a lesson within the lesson about how even when human beings are involved, and seemingly you could say, well, this whole situation, this isn't from God, this is man-made, and I did it to myself. I put myself into this situation. Yeah, that's true too. One doesn't obviate the other. There can be free will and there can be divine providence, and they can both be true. But the fact that there was free will involved doesn't take away from the fact that this is still God's story. God is still the author, and God is still telling exactly the story that he wants to tell, how he wants to tell it, through whom he wants to tell it, when and where and how, and in every detail, as a chosen form of communication. And that's to me the most important thing, to realize how everything we experience in life is God communicating with us. So that's my boring little story from yesterday. Like I said, it's pretty mundane. Thank God it's not dramatic. Thank God I'm not looking for drama. I'm not looking for intense experiences. I'm actually quite satisfied at this point in my life to have life lessons that are learned through mundane little stories like this. And I just wanted to share it with you. That's the story. Okay. God sends us people.